Top our world lead. For the first time in the nearly 3-year war of Russia against Ukraine, the U.S. Embassy in Ukraine's capital shut down today after the embassy says it received, quote, specific information of a potential significant air attack. This as Ukraine battles both Russian and North Korean soldiers in western Russia. And the relationship between the United States and Russia continues to grow more contentious by the day. CNN's Nick Payton-Walsh filed this report from Kyiv.
Ukrainian special forces fighting up close and taking prisoners. Rare footage of them still inside Russia's Kursk region, where British Storm Shadow missiles were claimed to have hit Wednesday, these fragments found by locals. Just hours earlier, American-supplied ATACMS missiles also ploughed into Russia, marking a stark new escalation in the war. Yet it was also in Kiev that fear grew, the US Embassy closing here for the first time since the invasion, citing a threat of air attack.
It's a reflection of the heightened tension here felt in the capital, Kiev. It's been under regular bombardment for over 2 months, but other European allied embassies are also limiting their function today. Perhaps a sense across NATO here that we're entering a new chapter of this conflict.
As Kiev braced for another sleepless night of sirens, the bereaved planted flags into this sea of loss in central Kiev. Anya's father died of his injuries 3 weeks ago after 5 months in a coma. She is raw from both the talk of peace and fear of sirens.
Так страшно, як сьогодні тут. Я вам скажу чесно, ми сьогодні під кожну тривогу ходили в укриття, бо було дійсно дуже страшно. Не хочеться якось завдавати шкоди нашій країні. Хочеться просто, щоб все було як було раніше, але без російського миру, без всього цього. Тобто
But it's never over in Kiev. The air raids intensifying in the past 2 months, and the weekends seen here the worst for a while. So the heightened anxiety behind several NATO embassies reducing operations this day sparks Ukrainian officials to plead they hold their nerve and deride this piece of Russian misinformation online, a detailed and fake warning of wide-scale attacks. This situation should be interpreted, he says, as Russia's attempt to use any elements of psychological influence. They have one instrument, which is to scare. This has always been a classic element of Russian politics, so I'd like our partners to be more careful as to the information coming from Russia.
Now, the State Department haven't said exactly what prompted this warning. They're reopening tomorrow, but bear in no doubt at all, this is not some false threat here. This is the capital city hit nearly every single night, and we've seen a remarkable 5 days in this conflict. Diplomacy thought about on Friday by the German Chancellor, sort of unilaterally ringing the Kremlin. Now the United States and the United Kingdom giving missiles to Ukraine to fire into Russia, and this fear in the Western diplomatic community here, they could be targeted. Startlingly fast-moving events here, Jake.
All right, CNN's Nick Payton-Walsh in Ukraine for us. Thanks so much. Joining us now to discuss, the editor of The Insider, Michael Weiss. And Michael, you write in your Substack Foreign Office, the election outcome was a huge factor behind President Biden, who's traditionally been escalation averse, or at least slow to escalate, finally allowing Ukraine to use American-made longer-range missiles to strike within her Russia. Tell us, who do you think in the administration was pushing this, and how big of an effect this might have on the war, this policy change?
Well, I think the most senior official in the White House who's been in favor of authorizing deep strikes is Secretary of State Antony Blinken. And several weeks ago, a senior U.S. official told me, look, they didn't want to do anything that might tilt the election or give talking points to the Trump campaign, which would warn of escalation, World War III, et cetera. And that same official said, however, if Donald Trump ends up winning, this might actually add ballast to the argument to authorize deep strike, because the logic, Jake, is that the U.S. intelligence assesses Vladimir Putin will not do anything untoward to retaliate against the United States or against Ukraine before Trump is inaugurated. That to do so would risk jeopardizing what he hopes to gain through a negotiated settlement with the incoming Trump administration.
How do you see the war dynamic changing when Trump takes office on January 20th?
I mean, look, this is the million-dollar question. The Ukrainians are surprisingly rather calm about this. They think that they can sort of work with the Trump administration. They see him as a tested proposition. They'll remind people that under his administration in term one, he authorized the distribution of Javelin anti-tank missiles. He sanctioned Nord Stream 2. But I've seen this movie before where the Ukrainians have been rather calm when they shouldn't be. And that was in the lead up to the full scale invasion, which they didn't see coming. So a lot will depend on the future of American security assistance. I mean, if Trump pulls the plug, if he says that's it, we're not giving any more weapons or ammunition, I think that's game over. I don't think the Europeans can sustain this themselves. Now, if he tries to come in and do a deal and negotiate something with Moscow, which the Russians then renege on and piss him off, basically, there is a question of will he try to authorize new weapon systems to the Ukrainians to prove a point. I mean, he's the great negotiator, right? He doesn't want to be outfoxed or outnegotiated, even by the Russian president he seems to admire.